If you want to get into some good Lord of the Rings debates, I recommend bringing up Éowyn, because what the heck? If you don't know me, I'm Lizzie. I do the podcast part of this channel with John, Jen, and Danny, and we all disagree on our opinions of Éowyn. So here is an extensive walkthrough of pretty much every thought I have about her character. Now, John's belief, which you can see if you watch some of his past videos, is that Éowyn is drawn to the glory and the renown of war more than anything else.
Yes.
But I think a little less of that. I actually don't feel that she's as far on that side of things. I think she just wants to do something tangible, and the rawness of war and combat appeals to her from her very cushy, comfy life where seemingly nothing matters. And I see a hint of that in the fact that she is drawn to the Rangers, who are a distinctly understated army. There's this quote from the book: "There was no gleam of stone or gold, nor any fair thing in all their gear and harness, nor did their riders bear any badge or token, save that each cloak was pinned upon the left shoulder by a brooch of silver shaped like a rayed star." This is sheer aura. There's no showiness whatsoever. And if anyone fought and no one knew about it, it would be just as important to her because she is doing what she believes in. Now, before I read these chapters, I was thinking about the damsel in distress theme of literature for her, because in The Two Towers, Hama describes her as fearless and high-hearted, loved by all. And Éowyn was appointed to the task of stewarding Theoden's people in his stead, which is a huge responsibility and probably the single most important thing she could ever do for Middle-earth. But it's a job she doesn't want, and we can't change Éowyn's mind. But we'll come back to that later. Before we dive in, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel, drop a comment below, and maybe I'll make another appearance. I don't know. But I'm going to start with who I think Éowyn is. And firstly, I think she's a patriot. Éowyn has genuine patriotism, and a huge part of her identity lies in the fact that she is from the noble house of Earl.
It's the House of Eorl.
Eorl.
Earl.
And for the last several years, she's watched that name and Theoden lose honor. I think she's sick of the nothingness that has been happening in Rohan while Grima controls Theoden. And she's starting to feel like this monarchy is just an illusion of honor when the real renown is being won on the battlefields. Secondly, I think she has been a fighter her whole life. Her parents died when she was 7 years old. She's had Grima breathing down her neck for years, ever since Saruman used her as a reward for possessing Theoden. And it's on top of all of this that she became loved and revered by her people. So now she has to uphold a certain image of who everyone thinks she is to maintain hope or trust or whatever it may be for her people. But she's overcome to be where she is today. And now that she's ready to do the next thing, at this crossroad, she realizes that she's getting pushed into a box. Her cage, as she later calls it. Now, if you watch the podcast episode, Danny brings up this idea that Éowyn is an annoying, whiny baby. But I think that if you believe that Éowyn is in love with Aragorn and then plays the crybaby victim when she doesn't get what she wants, you are not even scratching the surface of what is written. There is so much room to play around with character building in your mind, which is what makes reading so much fun. And Éowyn and I are pretty similar ages. She's just a few years older than me. So for me to sit here and delve into these ideas, I think it's pretty insane to play the she's young card and then just leave her to cry on her bedroom floor in Rohan. That's just not who she is. There are hints of her character all throughout the text, and a huge one is in this very simple sentence. "Then it seemed to Gimli and Legolas, who were nearby, that she wept, and in one so stern and proud, that seemed the more grievous." A lot of us have experienced this, where someone who is normally put together snaps, and everybody kind of freezes. Éowyn's natural disposition is stern and proud. She's probably pretty intimidating and well respected by everyone who knows her. She's been holding it together for so long. It reminds me of that quote, the bow long bent will break at last. And it makes me think of my parents, actually. I have seen my mom cry once in my life. Once. And I will remember that day for the rest of my life. It wasn't a tragedy. It wasn't a death where everyone around you is sobbing. Nothing was out of control in that moment. We were just sitting on the couch, talking. And the bow finally broke. My dad, on the other hand, cries all the time. If he's crying multiple times a week, it's normal, and we all just laugh about it together. Often, there's no meaning to his emotions or tears because we all just know that's who he is. And it's kind of the same with me. But when mom cried, that was different. So I don't think Éowyn was this up and down flippant person where her emotions wouldn't hold any weight. It's pretty clear to me that because this is so grievous, it isn't the norm for her. So we know who Éowyn is. Let's talk about the interactions between Éowyn and Aragorn, because this is where things get confusing. I've only read up to book 5, chapter 3, and as I'm reading this series for the first time, I'm trying to deconstruct and reimagine who these characters are outside of the movies. And I don't see how Éowyn loves Aragorn. I just don't. As I've gone back and reread this section multiple times, I see that there's some tension, but it's pretty insignificant. Like, they go from calling each other by title to calling each other by name. She touches his arm. They make eye contact. She just doesn't give me fall in love with a guy after one day energy. But Éowyn, considering her position in the kingdom, could probably get whoever she wants. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know how much she's considered to be royalty, but I don't know. There's this scene where she thinks Aragorn came to see her and pay his respects, maybe. But Aragorn said, "Nay, lady, be not troubled for us. If we may lie here tonight and break our fast tomorrow, it will be enough. For I ride on an errand most urgent, and with the first light of morning we must go." She smiled on him and said, Then it was kindly done, Lord, to ride so many miles out of your way to bring tidings to Éowyn, and to speak with her in exile." "Indeed, no man would count such a journey wasted," said Aragorn. "And yet, lady, I could not have come hither if it were not that the road which I must take leads me to Dunharrow." And immediately they jump into a conversation about the paths of the dead. So is Éowyn flirting with Aragorn and he's redirecting her, or is she just used to people wanting to come see her and she makes her do remarks? Maybe she thought Aragorn would want to check in after the whole situation with Grima Wormtongue. Ultimately, this part of the story, at least from my vantage point, seems like a choose-your-own-adventure. It can kind of be what you want it to be. If you want there to be more intimacy and tension in what they say, you can totally see that. If you don't want it to read that way, it doesn't have to. There's also this part where Éowyn calls Aragorn a thing that is high and excellent, which is true because he's a king, but he mirrors her wording and reasoning to say safe. "So may one counsel another," she said. "Yet I do not bid you to flee from peril, but to ride to battle where your sword may win renown and victory. I would not see a thing that is high and excellent cast away needlessly." "Nor would I," he said. "Therefore, I say to you, lady, stay, for you have no errand to the south. Neither have those others who go with thee. They go only because they would not be parted from thee, because they love thee." Then she turned and vanished into the night. I see the compliment in language used as adoration. She trusts Aragorn and, in my opinion, puts undue weight on his shoulders that somehow he is the turning point of this battle and the savior of her people. But I don't see that as romantic love anywhere near how the movies show it. And her last comment about love is a bit confusing. I don't know why she threw it in there. Because do I think that the army is going with Aragorn because they love him? No. Are Gimli and Legolas going with him because they love him? Maybe. It is deeply human not to want someone you know to walk straight into their death and to try everything to keep them with you. First, Éowyn appeals to logic, that no one walks into those caves and comes out alive. It's certain death. And when that doesn't work, she gets a little panicked and starts talking about love. By any means necessary, A, keep Aragorn alive because he's the savior, and B, get herself on the battlefield. So now let's talk about her desire to go to war, because the conversation doesn't end there. She was probably up all night thinking about this because she desperately and wholeheartedly wants to fight for and with her people. So the next day, Éowyn finds Aragorn as he's about to leave and says, "Aragorn, wilt thou go?" "I will," he said. "Then wilt thou not let me ride with this company as I have asked?" "I will not, lady," he said, "for that I could not grant without the leave of the king and of your brother, and they will not return until tomorrow. But I count now every hour, indeed every minute. Farewell." Then she fell on her knees, saying, "I beg thee." "Nay, lady," he said, and taking her by the hands, he raised her. Then he kissed her on the hand and sprang into the saddle and rode away, and did not look back. And only those who knew him well and were near to him saw the pain that he bore. The first thing I thought when I read this was, man, this feels weirdly paternal. She asked permission from Aragorn to go to war. And then bam, the very next thing that Aragorn says is, "Hey, I'd actually need the king or your brother to allow that." And they both know that her uncle or brother would never want her to go to battle. Ultimately, Éowyn doesn't have enough ownership of her own life to choose her fate. So going back to my initial thoughts, Éowyn knows what needs to be done and is not satisfied just watching. She's probably the most genuine and least victimized damsel in distress I have ever seen portrayed in literature. And I say this because she never actually needs rescuing. She's not stuck somewhere, waiting, helpless, but she's realizing that the door to her cage is slowly closing, and if it shuts, it's going to be locked from the outside. I think Éowyn is attracted to Aragorn because she knows he holds the key to her cage. He could be her escape. Instead, he's the voice of reason, reminding her that her duty is to her people and that is still a very important job. And if Éowyn had her heart's desire, she'd be fighting. She's jealous that the men can just get to do whatever they want, get out on the battlefield. But again, Aragorn reminds her that that's not true. And if he had his heart guide him, it would not take him to battle. He would be in Rivendell with Arwen. I do have to say that in The Two Towers, I really loved how gracefully she accepted her election to stewardess. I thought that was huge. Because would you rather die after a day in battle or live the rest of your life stewarding your people when probably your entire lineage is dead from a war that you wanted to fight in? You know what I mean? Like, I'd have to think that one over. Quick death or a life of responsibility and regret. But she just courteously accepts it. The final place we might be able to see Éowyn's love is in her distress at Aragorn's departure. But it's a very weak link to think that because she grieves as he leaves her the path of the dead, that somehow she wants to marry him. She might think he's cute, but she also is a human who cares about Aragorn. He essentially saved her uncle's life and brought the whole Rohirrim out of their stupor right on the precipice of global war. They actually stand a chance now, no matter how small it is, but with Aragorn walking into certain death, we're not too sure anymore. What really backs the idea that she's not in love with him is that she just up and leaves. No waiting around how Arwen waits for Aragorn to return. Éowyn wants war with or without Aragorn. She doesn't want Aragorn. And maybe all of you are rolling your eyes going, yeah, we already knew this, but I'm reading it for the first time, trying to figure out how in the world I could have been so deceived from what the book says. But I think what happened here is that Peter Jackson and Viggo Mortensen were able to create such a nuanced archetype of the ideal man, and rather than let Éowyn shine as a standalone character, they used her to further perfect Aragorn's character. Because just look at him. What else could a woman do? What else could she do but love him? And he's so thoughtful in the way he rejects her and stays true to Arwen. He loves Arwen no matter what women want him. Without the Aragorn Éowyn movie interactions, you do lose a bit of his perfection. Similarly, Éowyn brushes off the rejection and, through her "I am no man" scene, demonstrates her dignity and strength, and she proves that she's capable of what she thought she was. But I don't know if that's how the books actually end. We get to find out. Ultimately, what I truly believe and see most glaringly is that Tolkien probably wrote her character to represent women who wanted to serve in World War I. Behind the scenes of the war, thousands of women filled the civilian roles of men that left to go fight in the war. These women kept the wheels of society turning, but still felt like they couldn't give enough because their lives weren't on the line. And this is why I love Éowyn so much, because I think she speaks for the masses. She's not a one-off love interest. She's not another underwritten female overshadowed by a male protagonist. She represents a whole group of people that Tolkien probably heard and saw and loved and maybe was frustrated with. I don't think it's crazy to assume that he knew a couple Éowyns in his lifetime. Because I've never been to war, but I see a lot of myself in her and in many other women I know. So I'll leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments. Maybe I'll make another video. I don't know, we'll see. But for now, look toward Numenor that was, and beyond to Elvenhome that is, and to that which is beyond Elvenhome and will ever be. See ya!